Broadcasting from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, to around the globe. You're listening to Shark Bite Biz, your exclusive place for business strategy, sales, marketing, and tech in the roaring 20s. And now, here's your host, David Strausser.
I'm your glamorous host, David Strausser, and it's time for another epic episode of Shark Bite Biz, your place to learn how to grow a business during complete chaos. We have another fun episode scheduled today. We're going to discuss another amazing career transformation, and it's always fun to see where the road of life ends up taking you, even when you think you have it all figured out. It's a great story of mixing passion with the event industry, with a business background, and really allowing creatives to have somebody there with a strong business foundation to allow them to grow their businesses. We're going to discuss some important topics for creative business owners, like the top mistakes that creatives make in their businesses and what they can really do to think more analytically about their businesses, kind of like a CFO. Now, we aren't just going to talk about where creatives can improve. We're also going to chat about what creatives do right and what we can learn from them also. So who is today's guest? So glad you asked. Michelle Loretta. Michelle Loretta is a strategist for the events industry and creator of B-Sage Consulting. Since 2009, she has blended her past as an accountant for Deloitte, a sales and marketing manager for DDLA, a merchandiser for Coach, and a wedding stationery entrepreneur to help events industry entrepreneurs better their businesses. B-Sage Consulting produces the B-Sage Conference, a master-level event for wedding professionals nationwide. Michelle has been asked to speak at a number of industry conferences, including Wedding Wire World, NACE Experience, and the special event. She was named to the top 1,000 event professionals by BizBash in 2019. So without further delay, let's bring Michelle on in here.
Business operations.
Michelle, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. So glad to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be a fun discussion today. So obviously, I have your background here and it's pretty amazing. That's why you're with us. But for all our viewers, listeners out there, do us a favor. Tell us what makes Michelle. Michelle, what's your background, your experience? What do you do for a living?
So I'm Michelle Loretta. I'm the owner of B-Sage Consulting, and I do business consulting for event industry business owners. My background is in finance and accounting. I also worked in sales and marketing way back in the day. I got first into the events industry as a stationery designer. And in 2009, I started writing a business blog for the events industry. So how to have a smarter business. I found that I could talk on a lot of my previous career points to an industry that is extremely creative, but maybe isn't always looking at financials or thinking about marketing ROI and those sorts of things. So the blog initially just started as a way for me to connect with people in my industry. And then it evolved into the consulting business that it is today, almost 12 years consulting event industry business owners.
I've got to say, and this is a good thing about why you don't judge a book by its cover. Funny story, you're in accounting, so I assume that you know the ERP Sage.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've been ERP as well, too. And with Vision 33, we do SAP Business One. So I'm seeing Sage Consulting, and I'm thinking like, oh, my God, this is a Sage partner. This is a competitor of mine. I shouldn't have them on. No. But then I read through the bio, and, first thing I saw was under the bio was degree in account. I'm like, yeah, I don't think my employer, even though this is my own project, I don't think they would appreciate that. But then I read through the rest of it. I'm like, oh, thank God. We're good.
Yeah,
we're clear.
sage event business owners, and comes from, the wisdom, being more wise in your business.
Yeah.
And we don't have any trademark infringement. We actually own all our trademarks, so we don't have any infringements with the software. But it's funny because most people aren't even aware of that in, creative businesses or the events industry.
I know. So I just had to tell you, I thought that was funny, because that was like my first panic attack with a guest coming on the show, where it's like, oh my God, should I or should I? But I read it, and you did have I guess what I want to say is, in this show, we like to focus on career transformation.
Yeah.
And that's something that you did. I mean, you went into accounting in the corporate world with, like you were saying, Deloitte, and you ended up changing to do something more of what you loved, it seems.
Yeah.
Can you
I made
get a little
two
bit
big
into that?
shifts. Yeah. I've had two big shifts in my career. And so the first one was leaving, the corporate, the big, at that time it was big six, now it's big four accounting world. And so leaving Deloitte, I think, when you're in your 20s, you can get a little restless, maybe working in the corporate world. It's funny now being older and looking back and saying like, oh, that there's definitely a lot of wonderful things that I learned in those experiences. And in fact, the whole reason I do what I do is because of the foundation that I achieved at Deloitte. So, but in those early years, you are restless and you want to do something more creative. And so my first jump was into working for a small importer of children's apparel. They were an importer. They imported children's clothing from Europe. And so I managed their West Coast sales and marketing and those things. And so that was a jump because I wasn't even using any of my accounting. I did sales forecasting, but that was a little bit different from what I had done at Deloitte. So it was really kind of broadening my business skills into a completely different area. And there was a lot of creativity because of the brands that we were representing as well. And then I worked for that company.
Creativity and entrepreneurs is something that seems to go together a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot of creative business owners out there.
Yeah. And I tell people all the time, like, even if you're not artistic, as an entrepreneur, you are creative in a way because you're having to make things all the time. You're having to produce, make new services or make new products,
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'll use myself as an example. If you asked me to draw something, it's going to be stick figures. My 7-year-old draws better than me. In fact, I think the 3-year-old draws better than me. But I can't do anything artistic. But if you asked me, like, hey, we're making an ad, what should it look like? Or for example, look at like Shark Bite Biz, from the logo to the intro music, stuff like that. I designed that all myself. Now, I couldn't actually do the artistic part, but it started in my head, and then I had to tell somebody that was able to take my vision to life.
Yes, it's that ideation process that it's the creative part of being an entrepreneur, right? Coming up with ideas all the time. And that's what entrepreneurs, they always have a new idea every minute, something new to sell, some new business concepts, some new business ideas. So,
do you think it's hard to stay focused because of that? I mean, not to get sidetracked.
Some people, for sure. So I see two different kinds of entrepreneurs. I see the entrepreneur, and who talks about this is Michael Gerber in the E-Myth. He talks about, three different types of, business owners. So I'll touch upon two of them. One is the technician. So this is an artist that, like, they love their craft. And so they start a business because they absolutely love this craft. And it's unusual that someone's going to give them a job to be able to live out their craft making all the time, whether it's floral design or whether it's designing stationery, designing websites. So they start their business out of a need to create something, right? Those people aren't necessarily starting a business because they want to, have world domination with their empire, right? And then there's the true entrepreneur, which starts a business because they have an idea of how they want to do something better, a service or a product, and they really think about, like, the business aspects of, creating a growth strategy. So
and with that,
really.
I mean, when you're saying, a product or a service, it doesn't necessarily have to be a new product or a
Yeah.
new service. It could just be a new way or a better
Yes.
way of that product or that service.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We see that all the time. Very few businesses are set up on completely new ideas. Yes, we see,
Mhm.
innovation coming in, especially in the technology world. We do see those inventions and, innovative ideas and new strategies and new tech and new tools and things like that. But for the most part, we're taking established services or established products and finding better ways to do them or more niche ways to kind of service a client that needs aren't being met, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, that's totally true. I mean, I'm in the software world, and if you look, there's a billion different niche softwares out there
mhm,
for manufacturers, to home real estate, those type of people that service all those individual needs much more granular, especially
mhm.
like something like real estate. I mean,
Mm,
SAP Business One wouldn't be really good for real estate, but some of those niche softwares out there are perfectly built for that, and it's priced for that market. So yeah, I totally see what you're saying there. So what do you think some of the top mistakes some of the creative business owners make, and how would you suggest them try to avoid that?
Yeah, I'm pretty heavily involved in the financial side when I'm working with a client, and I think that a lot of creative business owners or newer entrepreneurs they don't feel comfortable with the number side, the money side of the business, and so human nature is tends to you're going to focus on what you feel most comfortable in. So I think that ends up over the long term being a disservice to that business and to that business owner. If the better business owners who recognize, like, I'm not comfortable with the numbers, I don't understand this piece of my business, they will go and hire help to help them with that. They'll start out maybe with a bookkeeper, definitely with a tax accountant, and then maybe longer term with a financial strategist, which is what I do with businesses. But even then, here's the piece that people don't really always realize. Even if you have these people helping you in your business, you're still in charge of how your business works and how your business runs and how your business makes money. So you still need to have at least a basic understanding of how the money runs through the business. And you can hire these people to help you make stronger
Hmm.
decisions, right? Like a strong financial strategist. What I do is I try to coach my clients through making stronger decisions. I try to show them, like, these are how the numbers are going to help you make stronger marketing decisions, stronger operational decisions. And that's why somebody would hire me, as a CFO for hire, they'd hire me to help them go through those numbers. So people are a little nervous because they're not comfortable with it. If you get more comfortable with it, and like all things, right, the more you practice something, the better you will become at that thing, whatever it is,
Yeah.
whether it's numbers or yoga or football or whatever it is, you will become better at it with more practice. And so
Yeah.
that's a make or break it situation, because the money side of the business ties to almost every single business decision that you'll make in the business. It really is the backbone for almost every single business decision. And so from
Yeah.
anything like how you're going to market, to
100%.
how you're going to sell, to how you're going to operate, should I hire more people? If I hire more people, would it actually lead to more money, or will it end up breaking even or end up costing me more, right? So having that structure of the numbers behind those decisions can be a complete game changer.
How do they, I mean, so at a granular level, one of the things that you brought up I thought was kind of interesting there at the end was like, if I hire more people, will it cost me more money?
Oh,
Will it make me more money? I mean, how do you actually figure that out from that business perspective?
yes. Oh my gosh. This is my favorite kind of challenge, actually. Yeah, I mean,
Good.
it's like it's a big puzzle, right? And so, the first thing we do is we'll look at this is
Because you're
essentially
talking
it's
essentially
scaling.
ROI. What's that?
Yeah, it's ROI and a return on investment for an employee, but not
Mhm.
every employee or person that you hire is going to, be a revenue center, right? So you may not be hiring somebody that has a direct payoff. But this is really a scaling equation, right? Like if I'm operating as a sole business owner, I call it, sole micropreneur, right? And you are party of one running your business, and you think, wow, I'm doing well just by myself. If I hire 2 or 3 more of me, then I can do 2 or 3 more times of the business, right? Like that's always the theory, right? Like if I'm netting 100,000 all by myself, can I net 400,000 with 4 people? That's the math people think, right? But you actually have to like line up those numbers to see if it makes sense. If you're paying somebody $70,000 to execute the same type of work that you do, is it actually going to pay off in a net of $100,000?
It makes sense to me. It makes, like what you're saying makes sense because again, falling back to what I do, we're very similar. Business One is essentially an accounting system. That's the backbone of the system. And we also do Sage Intact as well too. But, with that, the way that we position it is, let's just say it's $100,000 cost, total implementation, all in for year 1, getting it rolled out, implemented so that they can go live, is you're getting your ROI because let's just say they were using QuickBooks and Excel spreadsheets previously. Okay. Things were a mess. They may have data silos where they have to copy things down multiple times. They probably are prone to errors, all that stuff. It's costing them money and it's redundant work for them. So when we look at that for the ROI for us, which essentially would almost be the same way as if you hired another person or two to take care of this stuff for you, is that you're able to have the technology then free up your workers. So that way, instead of fixing errors and losing money because you're doing errant tasks, right? You're able to put those employees on profit, on revenue generating activities or other tasks. So is it that same thought process?
Yeah, absolutely. Is there, what changes within the business operations that would enable the business to produce more, right? Whether it's implementation of software or implementation of new staff. And then what's the time period, right? Because it doesn't happen overnight. Do you start to see increased profits after a couple years? Like what is your expectation for that turnaround? And what I tend to see a lot of times is, with the people equation is sometimes people are thinking, well, if I hire, those 4 people, I can have, 4 times the profits. What they don't always realize is that sometimes, there's like a cannibalization of profits, right? So they end up breaking even. And so now they have a lot more staff people and they're still making the same money, right? And so that's something that we're trying to figure out.
I mean, if you're hiring 4 positions, you've got to figure for whatever reason, at least one of them is going to turn over, though. I mean, whether the employee doesn't work out, or the employee isn't as good as they thought, or the employee just didn't like it and decided to not stick with the job. So you have that X factor as well, too.
And that's the thing is like, and so that's why I say no number exists by itself, like in a vacuum, right? Like every number has another trigger. And when you're hiring somebody, you're thinking like, okay, I need a $70,000 salary, but there's 10 other triggers that happen that have nothing to do with numbers, right? It's, who do I need to hire? What are the values that I want this person to possess? What are the skills that I need them to possess? What is my system for bringing them on, training them? Is this system pretty turnkey so that if they don't work out, I can replace them, right? Like there's so many little things that have nothing to do with the initial equation or the initial question, which is, can I afford this person to have them make money, right? So I think that's why people don't see the fact that like the numbers actually dictate so many of their decisions within the business.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's kind of the same thing with me, like how we try to help them out with our software again, because we try to give them those KPIs and stuff like that. So that way, I mean, if you look at business owner, most business owners aren't with what we do. They're not in there for the day-to-day work, but they do want to be able to log on. And they say, this is literally what they tell us. I just want to log on, have my screen appear and show me the KPIs. How much money do we owe? How much money is owed to us? How much
Yeah.
money is overdue? How much is on back order? Stuff
Yeah.
like that. And,
But that's just the
you know,
first piece, right? Like you
right,
can see what that number is. And the second piece, which is so much more valuable, is like, what is the decision that that's allowing me to make, right?
right.
The number only tells you one piece of it, is like, what am I going to do with that number? Yeah.
hmm Exactly, exactly. So let's talk about this. One of the things that I like to focus on the show as well too is I have a recurring theme with this, and it's not just focusing on, like, everybody's got to do a postmortem. Okay, you got to see what did you do bad, learn from
Mm.
the mistakes. Everybody knows that, but one of the, I think, overlooked items, and I keep bringing this up all the time, is you also have to learn from what you did good. I mean, you just can't look
Mm.
at where you did things bad. You
Yes.
have to look at where you did things that are good, because they're good habits then that you should be reinforcing, and you have to realize those. So what do you say about how, I guess, what creatives are doing and how we can learn from them? What are they doing right and how can we learn from it?
Yeah. I think creative business owners, at least in my field in the events industry, are very collaborative,
hmm
and they utilize each other, especially in the last 10 years. I got into the industry 16 years ago, and I think it was a lot more competitive then. There's a little bit more of like an old guard sort of situation back then. And part of this is generational too. But in the
Yeah.
last 10 years, I see so much collaboration happen, which to me, that gives you so much opportunity for innovation when you start to really realize, like, wow, this person does this really well, I do this really well, and we can collaborate together, whether it's something to execute for an actual event or whether it's something on the business side of things. So I see a lot more
hmm
sharing of resources and tools and information, and that makes us all stronger. And I think that makes the industry stronger, and I think that makes small businesses stronger. I've seen it especially in the last 8 months in terms of the pandemic. Our industry specifically
Wait, what
has
what
been
what pandemic are
obliterated.
you what pandemic are you
What
speaking of?
pandemic? Oh. Hopefully when people are looking at this in 2023, they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's right. We had a pandemic back then.
Yeah. It's going to be one of those defining moments, I think, of
Mhm.
our lives that
Yeah.
people are going to remember. I mean, just like, September 11th, for example, growing up,
Yes.
remember
Yes.
that moment
Yes.
where you are, how life was, the days
Mhm.
after, stuff like that. Same thing with the pandemic. It's going to be a staple, I think, for our generation.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, already people are like, where were you March 15th? Because March 15th was kind of like that cutoff for a lot of people in the country where the schools shut down and businesses closed all of a sudden. I know for some people it was March 1st and some people it was a little bit later, but a lot of people
Yeah.
kind of use that March 15th as a reference point. We're already having those conversations. So yeah, so in the events industry, our industry has been completely shut down, and it
Yep.
continues to be shut down, which is really hard. And so I've seen that collaboration come really strong right now. And I've said
Collaboration
this.
through digital transformation.
What's that?
Collaboration through digial transformation, as
Well,
far as doing webinars and
yeah,
things
for
like
sure,
that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. You know, on one level for the client, like transforming, some events have been able to transform to virtual, not
Right.
all, depending on the nature of the event. But also I think in terms of our own education as an industry, there's been just a lot of like, okay, let's figure out how our industry is going to survive. I'm going to teach a webinar on cash flow strategy, and I'm going to teach a webinar on messaging, and I'm going to teach a webinar on contracts right now, which is a really big thing in our industry as well, right? So
Yeah.
um yeah, the digital, it's really interesting. The digital space, there are things that are not going to go away, right? Like they've
hmm
become part of how we're going to do business. So a lot of these conferences in our industry that have moved online,
Right.
I think we will go back to, in-person events. We do realize how important that is, and the virtual can't capture everything. But the virtual is going to become a necessary component of all of those in-person events, right? So we're going to see a lot more hybrid in terms of the way events are happening.
Yeah, we had an event specialist back, I think it was during the summer. His name was Sam Castro, and he was telling us that the trend that he was seeing now, I think the current case counts was much lower around
Mhm,
that time,
mhm,
and he was in Florida, I believe. But
mhm,
he was seeing a lot of hybrid events
mhm.
where it would be a webinar online,
Yeah.
and then you would have a very, very, very limited
Yes.
amount of people in person, mass
Yes.
socially distancing, stuff like
Yes.
that. And he really felt that going forward, even once this pandemic is done, we're probably going to see a lot more hybrid events
I
in the future.
agree.
That might be something that sticks around.
I agree. I agree. It's really interesting. And it's still so new. I feel like we're still trying to figure out what that looks like.
Hmm.
In terms of kind of like this pod structure where you can have like
Hybrid weddings.
yeah, hi, I don't, weddings is a little bit hard, but there's going to be a live streaming component hands down, regardless of, how weddings are going to always be in person, but there's going to be a streaming component to it forever now. People are going to want to see that live stream of the wedding. Um, it was
Oh
already
yeah.
kind of going in that direction, even with, the boom of Facebook Live
Yep.
and Instagram stories, and people were already broadcasting their weddings in short clips as it was. But now I think
Oh yeah.
it's necessary. It's not just a fashion, thing, right?
Can't wait to log on to Facebook to see the next wedding and see the next
I
funeral.
watched the Facebook like a couple months ago, and it's
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
that I didn't really even know that well. It was like a work colleague, and it was fun. It was really fun watching her wedding, and I wouldn't have been invited to the real one, so because I'm not that
Yeah.
close with her. Yeah, it was
Well,
great.
that's great. So let's see. What about CFOs? How can business owners think more like a CFO in their
Yeah.
business?
Yeah, I think it comes down to really trying to understand what your numbers are telling you and talking to, right? So first, you need to make sure that you have a very basic understanding of, accounting and financial strategy. And then
Hmm.
you have to recognize also that there's three different parts to financial strategy. One is the tax piece, right? And so
Right.
you should have a tax expert because, even, the most expert person, I'm not a tax expert because I'm not in the tax code every single week. So you do need to have
Right.
a tax person, a bookkeeper if your business is at that point where you can have somebody manage your bookkeeping, and then a financial strategist if your business is also at that point where you're trying to grow on another level. If you want to think like a CFO, you have to be thinking of those three areas very separately. Like, what's my tax strategy? What's my accounting, bookkeeping strategy? And what's my actual financial strategy moving forward, looking at my picture forward. So a CFO is going to make the time to do all of those things. And that's where I
Right.
see a lot of people is that they just don't take the time to do that. Um, and so you're taking time to look at your history. So what's happened in the past through your reports, and use that information to make decisions for the future, right? So one of them is financial history and one of them is financial planning. And so a CFO will do those two things. They will take a look at the past in order to make decisions for the future. And so if you
Right.
want to think more like a CFO, you're going to take time to look at your reports, to look at financial information, and then you're going to say, hey, what's my strategy for the upcoming year, for the upcoming 2 years. um,
Hmm.
I encourage people to make a cash flow plan, and that ties in, sales goals, sales forecasts, and expense budgets. It puts it all together so that you know what's happening with your cash picture at any point in time. That's what businesses need to know, is their cash situation. Cash is the make or break it for small businesses.
Oh yeah, definitely. And right now, the cash flow for many small businesses, especially in the event industry,
Hmm.
is very tight. So I guess to
Hmm.
kind of start wrapping this up here, what final words of advice would you have, around cash flow for, you know, uh, creative businesses in this space?
Yeah. So, number one, create a cash flow strategy so that you can actually see that roadmap. And the more often you use and incorporate it, you actually do get better at foreseeing the future.
Yeah.
The first time it's very loose, but over time, I mean, every client that I have, it's like, wow, I know exactly what's going to happen with my business in the next 6 months. That gives you so much control, especially now we're going in the pandemic. My clients are like, I know what's happening in my business, even though I don't have any events for the next, year. So number one is create a cash flow strategy. The second thing is you have to have a cash buffer, and everyone is, risk relationship is a little bit different. I'd say before the pandemic, some people were like 1 month, 2 months is fine. And now people are realizing I want a cash buffer of 6 months, right?
You're right.
And even 6 months, even given the pandemic, may be a lot for some people, right? That secret number that people say is like about 3 months, right? Again, depends on your risk, your relationship with risk. The cash buffer is going to help you in times of crisis, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's, a recession or something happens in your personal life and you need to pull away from your business for a little bit. So those are the two pieces of advice I have for people.
Wow, that's perfect advice. This has been such a pleasure. How can people reach out to you?
They can find me at bsageconsulting.com. So B-E, Sage, S-A-G-E. So this is like bwiseconsulting.com.
Perfect. And I will definitely make sure that we put that link in the descriptions on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, everywhere that you can watch or listen to this show. Thank you again, Michelle. This has been so fun to talk with you and pick your brain about money.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Oh, thank you. Cheers. Wow, such a great conversation with Michelle. First, if you found this interview helpful, if it gave you some insights for business and you think it can help you grow, do us a favor. We're trying to build this Shark Bite Biz community. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. But if you really want to help out, do me a solid, please. I'm asking you, let's get Michelle Loretta and Shark Bite Biz trending. Share this video out to your network. Now let's get back on track talking to Michelle, okay? You've got to remember some of the top mistakes that Michelle brings up. The financial side of things, especially newer business owners, they're just not really that comfortable with managing their finances. As Michelle said, that's the piece that a lot of people don't realize, that, hey, you can get all these people around you, all these advisors, all these financial gurus, sales gurus, marketing gurus, whatever it is, you can get them all around you, but you're still in charge. So help your business by putting all those strong pieces around you so that you can make better decisions. Another area of the conversation that actually hit my specialty was when we were talking about software solutions. I deal with tier 1 solutions for small to mid-sized businesses, and there is a cost to that. But that cost oftentimes is outweighed by the savings of double data entry, managing Excel spreadsheets, and it really just allows businesses to get a quick ROI. And Michelle brings up another great point of just figuring out, how long will it be until you can get an ROI from an operational standpoint if you do digitally transform with a new solution for business management? Lastly, Michelle brings up the great example, about hiring 4 people and watching out, because even if you're hiring 4 people, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get 4 times the profits. As she puts it, you can easily cannibalize your profits as well, because a lot of times what will happen is you are earning the same revenue, but now you have more additional overhead with those additional employees. So it's really not helping you drive revenue. And that's where I think, digitally transforming, getting a new software solution can really help you all out. So this was a fun video, a great conversation with Michelle. What did you all think? What software solution do you use to manage your business? What did you think of the interview with Michelle? Leave your comments down below. And like always, if you want to be a guest on the show, if you got a great business story to tell, shoot me an email, david@sharkbitebiz.com. Once again, I'm David Strausser. This is Shark Bite Biz, and we'll see you all next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Shark Bite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.